Wow, look at that. You really piped down really quickly. Welcome to the Martin Luther King Memorial Library, our fantastic hosts for this amazing event. My name is Zack, Klim, and I'm director of the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience, and I'm so grateful you came to spend some time with us. So give yourselves a round of applause for coming and celebrating peace and museums and storytelling and all sorts of wonderful things. I'll start by telling you a little bit about this amazing organization that I have the pleasure of working with and for. As I said, I'm director of the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience. We are a museum in the making, and it is an organization that started roughly 25 years ago as a hyper-local initiative in Portland, Oregon. It was started by returned Peace Corps volunteers that were interested in sharing their objects and the related stories. And they collected those very diligently and shared them with the local community. And then fast forward 15 years later, at the invitation of the National Peace Corps Association and many folks here in Washington, it became a national movement. It broadened its breadth and scope and continues to reach larger and larger audiences. And so I am the one and only staff member at the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. But I don't leave it alone. I work with an incredible board of directors. Many of them are here tonight. All of them are recognized on the acknowledgements wall to the left here in the exhibit. And we are slowly amassing an organization, but also a movement to just increase national dialogue around peace education, cross-cultural learning, and fostering a curiosity about service to others. And so that's our objective. As a museum in the making, we do not have a permanent exhibition space, but we rely on incredible partnerships like this one with the MLK Library, where they've hosted us for free in this amazing, glorious space, which allows us to bring not only the collection, but the stories to the general public and to folks like yourselves. So we really, really appreciate the MLK Library and our other partner in 2025, the International Peace Museum in Dayton, Ohio, for hosting us and helping us share our story and just raise an awareness of the incredible experiences that shaped us and as a result shaped our nation. So thank you, to the library. I'm just going to talk a little bit about stories because that's why we're here tonight. And I would argue that stories is a place where truth lives. And we often talk about Peace Corps ideas and ideology, and Peace Corps ideals are many times nebulous, but often well-intentioned, but hard to convey. And I think the stories of experiences, many of which you'll hear tonight, are a really powerful, impactful way to share that ideology. And we're proud to be able to do that in partnership with these incredible storytellers here tonight. And part of our objective is to reclaim a national narrative about who we are as Americans and who we are as Americans interacting with those outside of this country. And we just have incredible examples of that here tonight. So thank you for coming and sharing this space. I would like to give thank you to Peace Corps, the agency. We're so pleased to have CEO Paul Shea, along with his colleagues here with us tonight. Many of you may know Andrew Wilson, who was down doing an information table in the lobby all afternoon, engaging the general public. So we're dramatically increasing the Peace Corps presence here at the library and offering folks an opportunity to engage with us and share our curiosity about the world. Without further ado, I'm going to invite CEO Paul Shea of the Peace Corps to come and just share some brief remarks, and then I'll turn it over to Meleia Rose, who's going to be our MC for the storytelling event. Thank you so much. Oh, and consider sharing your story with the museum with the QR codes above. Paul, please.
Thanks, everyone. It's an honor to be here. This is really great. When I first started working for Peace Corps, I was fresh out of college. It was 1991, and the office I worked in was the Office of Finance, and there were no RPCVs in the unit, and so it was working with federal workers, and it was fine. Come to work, and maybe they tell you what they did on the weekend, or maybe they tell you what they were going to do on the weekend, but that was about the length of it. But as I got to make my way around the building and meet returned Peace Corps volunteers, that's when Peace Corps really became fun. Because you go to a party, you go to lunch, you go to happy hour, you play on the softball team, and you were playing with RPCVs, and they all had stories. And I was like kind of like a first chair recipient of all these Peace Corps stories, and it was just great to hear. And it made my work there, it made me fall in love with the agency. And so we're here tonight to hear Peace Corps stories, and that's great, because I never get tired of them. And so I'm gonna go sit down right now because I don't want to talk anymore. I want to sit down and hear Peace Corps stories. Thank you, everyone.
Paul, thanks again for joining us. Meleia, the stage is yours.
With you. My name is Meleia Rose. I served in Peace Corps Malawi 2007-2009, and I've been in storytelling training with Peace Corps for a very long time in a number of roles. And back in 2016, we were permitted to do a storytelling contest that ended up at the Kennedy Center, and we got to tell stories there, so that was a really special time. Then years later, Andrew Wilson in the Third World Office decided to do it again, reached out. I said, I'm all in, I'll give you whatever you need, I want to help. So we did 2 more storytelling shows at the Kennedy Center again, and we've been sharing Peace Corps stories forever. And so when Zack said, I've got this space, I've got this date, I was like, I'm all in, I'm gonna recruit, we're gonna do this. We have to do another Peace Corps storytelling show. So thanks for coming out and being with us. This show is themed Home for the Holidays with Peace Corps. And so to get us in the mood, I think we all, at this point, have the holiday mood. We've been at parties, we drove here through crazy traffic and saw lots of holiday lights, but I want to bring in the spirit of home. So I'm gonna invite you all to go ahead and close your eyes. And hold both of your hands out in front of you, parallel to each other, like you're holding a book upright, but not touching yet, but upright and close to each other. And now I want you to picture your home. If you served in Peace Corps, picture your home in the Peace Corps. And if you haven't served yet, picture your home wherever that is for you. And then I want you to go ahead and touch together your pinky fingers, just your pinky fingers, not your other fingers yet. And picture the path or the driveway or what is leading up to that home. What does your door look like? What is the threshold of your home? And then go ahead and enter that home and touch your ring fingers to each other. And imagine who you greet when you come in that home. Maybe you got the space all to yourself, or maybe you're greeting family or pets, you're putting down your coat, you're stripping away the day, you're getting into the space. And now go ahead and touch your middle fingers together. And picture where you prepare your food. What's the heat source like? What is your kitchen layout? What are some of the meals you prepare there, and what is the space where you eat those meals? What is the whole food zone of home like for you? And then go ahead and touch your pointer fingers together. And picture that place in your home that you can really relax. Maybe it's a yoga mat or a favorite place to read. Maybe it's a big welcoming couch or a view out a window. What is that place in your home where you can relax? And then go ahead and touch your pinkies together, your last finger, whatever that is at this point. And picture your bed, your pillows, your blankets. If you're in Peace Corps, maybe you're tucking in your mosquito net. You're looking up at your ceiling materials, and you're going to sleep, whatever area that is for you. And now take this little tent, this little roof you've created with your hands, and raise it up above your head. And go ahead and open your eyes and look around. We are home with the Peace Corps family. This is our village tonight. Thank you all so much for bringing that vibe in and for being home for the holidays with Peace Corps. We're gonna go on an incredible journey tonight. I'm so glad you chose to spend some of your holiday precious time with us. You're not gonna be disappointed. And so I'm gonna be your guide. We're gonna travel across the Peace Corps world together. And I'm very excited to bring up our first storyteller who served in Peace Corps Benin, Corey Quinlan Taylor, with his story, Accord de la Paix, Thanksgiving. Please warm the stage for Corey.
As a Peace Corps volunteer, the holidays always hit different. For my first Thanksgiving, me and several other volunteers were invited to a Peace Corps staffer's house. And so that was really wonderful. That was nice. Had turkey, stuffing, all the trimmings. But for my second Thanksgiving, for my last Thanksgiving in country, I was separated from family and friends. I hadn't been home for 2 years like many Peace Corps volunteers. And so me and my postmate named Boulan, we were having some beers at a roadside bar near Save in Benin, and we were talking about this, and we were like, well, what are we gonna do for Thanksgiving? And he was like, well, why don't we host Thanksgiving? And I was like, well, why don't we host Thanksgiving? I mean, we had the infrastructure for it, right? So for my house in the woods, I had a long extended porch, and I had a thatched roof that would provide shade from the sun, right? For my working liaison at the provincial credit union, there was a long conference table that we could borrow that could seat about 12 people, right? And also in front of my house, I had a rotisserie made of like rebar iron and a fire pit. So that would be amazing for Thanksgiving roast. But the thing is, I didn't know where we could find turkeys. I mean, in Benin, they had guinea fowl. That's like the biggest birds I could find. But, I mean, there are no turkeys in Benin. And Boulan smiled at me. He's like, I know a turkey guy. And I was like, how? I mean, I've never seen it in my entire year and 2 months in Benin. I've never seen a turkey. He's like, I can take care of it. So I was like, all right. So we had 4 weeks until Thanksgiving. So we had to get the word out. We had to like tell the other volunteers, okay? And this was like late 90s. So cell phones existed, but not everyone in country, not even the majority of volunteers had cell phones. And you could go to the post office and use the phone, but it was gonna cost you money. And you know, there was the occasional wealthy person in your town and village who had access to a phone, but again, you didn't want to bother that person. And so we relied on one of the most sophisticated communication apps known to mankind that we were privy to in Benin, little black kids. So in Benin, in the late 90s, if you wrote on a note, volunteer to fill in the blank village, and said, give this to that volunteer, a little black kid would get it with pride and be like, okay, we're gonna do it. In like a few hours, I kid you not, that note would get to that volunteer throughout the country of Benin, okay? I don't know how many of you saw Lord of the Rings, but there was that scene where Gandalf lit all of those torches that lit across Middle Earth, across mountaintops and across valleys and across forests and everything like that. It was like a montage. But instead of, you know, torches across mountains, you had little kids named Dieudonné and Jean-Michel and Mary Claire. They were just dropping those notes off across the country. We sent out 24 notes, thinking maybe 12 would confirm their availability. We got 20, right? 20 people were interested in coming to our Thanksgiving, okay? So in time, we had about a week left before the celebration, okay? So we go to the town of Boycom to find the turkey guy. And this was like something out of Breaking Bad, right? It was like a truck, like set aside in the darkness. And we come up to this guy, and he's the turkey guy. And he opens up the back of his truck, right? And I was like, what are you doing here? And the turkeys were like, what are you doing here? There were these turkeys. They weren't like the industrial farm turkeys that we know in the States, white turkeys, all generic. These were turkeys that had brown, auburn, red, white speckled, black feathers. The turkeys you saw when you were 5 years old in elementary school. And I kid you not, I don't know how those turkeys got here to Benin, but I was like, it's a miracle. So we picked out 2 turkeys. And since my house had a little bit more space, we put newspaper in one of my empty rooms and some water and some corn to kind of feed these turkeys. And then we went to my Burkina Bay neighbor, Bironet, because I don't know how to kill a turkey. And I was like, hey, could you kill and dress these turkeys and, we'll pay you. And so, of course, there was the Benin back and forth, bargaining. So we made an agreement, and also I invited her and her family to join us for Thanksgiving. So this was like a really exciting thing. And so the day of Thanksgiving, volunteers started showing up. Janet showed up with her green beans and the fancy expat butter, and Sonia and Trish, they showed up with their craft dinner from like the care packages. And Brian, James, JP, they showed up with like wood and potatoes. And then other volunteers, they showed up with sauce sésame, which is a sauce made from sesame seeds, and Wagazi cheese, which is a cheese made by the Tuaregs. And then you have beans and rice, which no matter where you are around the world, beans and rice taste incredible. And like a well-oiled, dusty machine, everyone went to work. Nobody was told what to do. People were chopping wood. People were tying turkeys to rotisseries. People were smothering these turkeys with fancy French butter and salt and pepper and just turning over 3 hours of time. And the side dishes were warmed up on my Peace Corps stove. And the tables were set on the credit bureau table. And we were able to pull together through our efforts an amazing dinner. And people laughed, and they had fun, and they had beers, and we enjoyed each other's time. The thing is, over the course of that dinner, I realized that these people were becoming friends and family for me. And over the course of years to come, whether it was like funerals, or whether it was like weddings, or whether it was like people injured in hospital, visits and things like that, we realized how much of a family we were. And, that stuck with us years later. Just like the people in this room are like family to me. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Corey. Peace Corps family is real. Very exciting. It's not easy to go first. Give it up for Corey again, please. So nice to spend Thanksgiving in Benin with all of his Peace Corps family there. Next up, we're traveling to the island of Madagascar with Will Dreyer with his amazing story called The Heart of the Village.
I knew I needed to find the beating heart of the village as soon as I arrived in Anevka, Madagascar as a Peace Corps volunteer. Now, before I take you on a journey there, how many of you have actually been to Madagascar by show of hands? All right. Well, it's of course a very long trip away, but anyone who's been there, or even if you've just seen a documentary, surely knows the stunning mystery of the Malagasy forest. The first day I arrived, after a long trip along winding and hilly roads, I caught a glimpse of the place I would call home for the next 2 years. It was beautiful. Wooden homes with thatched roofs blended into the hillsides like they'd been there for generations. Not too far off in the distance, within eyesight of the village, I could see the edge of the forest. I really wanted to go check it out, and over the next few days, I had a chance to go explore the forest for myself. The first time I stepped inside that forest, my senses became filled with the smells of plant matter permeating through the air of the forest. I could hear the sounds of the forest, the leaves rustling in the wind, the chirping of birds in the treetops. One of my early trips into the forest was to accompany a group of people who had invited me to come witness a traditional blessing ceremony led by the village elder. Now, I had learned during my Peace Corps training about the importance of village elders in Malagasy culture, and so I wanted to check it out for myself. That morning, I had the chance to interact with our village elder for the first time. His name was Zanakutu. He came up to about my shoulder in height. He was an older gentleman with gray hair, and he carried a walking stick. That morning, as we walked into the forest, I listened to Zanakutu talk about how much he loved the volunteer who came before me. Our path that morning brought us into the forest and up a hill. And when we reached the top, there was this clearing overlooking this beautiful view of the forest. There, Zanakutu gathered us, and we formed a semicircle, and he started the traditional blessing ceremony. He talked about how he wished for prosperity for the village, and though I couldn't understand everything he was saying, I could tell that it was important by the looks on the faces of everyone around me. At one point, they took out an old-looking bottle that was full of a cloudy-looking liquid. I knew immediately that that was toka gas, which is a local Malagasy moonshine made out of sugarcane. They passed it around the semicircle, and everyone who wanted to took a swig. And I thought to myself as I saw the bottle coming towards me, am I gonna have to do that too? I could even smell the smell of the moonshine wafting up and burning my nostrils before it even reached my hand. Finally, it reached my hand. I brought the bottle to my lips, took the tiniest sip I could before passing it on to the next person without making a gagging face. The ceremony continued, and after it was over, on the walk back to the village, I thought about how cool it was to have been a part of the traditional blessing ceremony. I wanted to learn more. My next interaction with Zanakutu came a few weeks later. I was planning a community meeting to get to know folks in the village, and so a few of my friends came over to my house to help me plan it. As we were sitting around the table, talking about our plans for the meeting, I noticed one key omission in the list of people that we had to invite. Zanakutu, the village elder, wasn't on the list. And so as I'm sitting there, I'm this brand new Peace Corps volunteer, speaking preschool level broken Malagasy. All my friends are staring at me. I knew I had to speak up and say something. And so I proclaimed confidently in Malagasy, "Tsumain sasanan tagalamena," to remind my friends that we needed to invite the village elder. The confused look on their faces told me that I had said something wrong. And it slowly dawned on me that what I had said had nothing at all to do with inviting the village elder. In fact, what I had said meant, we must wash the village elder. Of course I didn't want to wash the village elder, and I felt embarrassed to have said something like that. But my friends thought it was funny, so I rolled with it. The good news was that the day of the meeting finally arrived, and it actually went pretty well. Zanakutu showed up, and instead of being washed, he actively participated in the meeting. That interaction gave me enough connection with Zanakutu to go visit him at his home a few weeks later. And so one day, I found myself walking through rice fields and past vegetable gardens and entering the forest where Zanakutu lived. His home was up on a hill, and as I approached, I shouted out, "Hodio," the Malagasy substitute for knocking on someone's door. I heard his wife respond from within, "Andrews." And so I entered. There they beckoned for me to join them on a woven mat on the floor, and they served me rice with stewed green vegetables. I wasn't actually expecting to eat that day, but Malagasy hospitality dictates that hosts will share whatever food they have with their guests. There's even a proverb, "Valala rai whanapana," even one cricket will be shared. Zanakutu told me so many stories that gave me insight into Malagasy wisdom and local history that day. One of them was about a fisherman who ate a talking eel. Another was about how the forest got its name. And finally, he told me about how a whole village had rejected the Malagasy tradition of hospitality when they turned away a stranger in need of food and water. And that village later became cursed for life. Listening to Zanakutu's stories taught me the importance of respecting the traditions of the village elders. They hold so much knowledge about the land and their people. And now, reflecting on my 2 years of service, I know that I found the beating heart of the village in the wisdom of Zack.
Thank you, Will. I love that. Will was a casualty of USAID earlier, so if any of you need to hire him to wash your village elders, he's available. I'm going to put a plug in for that. Next, we're traveling back to West Africa, to the country of Mali with Katie Heyman, with her story called Redefining Hospitality, the Midwest Meets Mali.
I thought I knew what hospitality was. Molly told me I had much to learn. So I'm a Midwest gal. I'm from Ohio. OH? All right. I know my hospitality as that Midwest nice. I'm the type that, has a big family. There's always enough food to go around. And if you get the bill at the end of a meal, you're fighting to pay, and that waiter or waitress is not happy to be there with you. So, I find myself, the first time I ever left Ohio, in Mali, West Africa. First time I ever left the country. And I arrive in Mpegu, a small village of 300 people in the Sahara Desert. I am dripping sweat in places I've never experienced. And I am walking out from my home, which in this village, it was a typical mud brick home you would see. They were generally 10 by 10, and they would fit entire families inside. And I walked that day to go meet Abdullah. Abdullah is my homologue, my counterpart, the person who really got me through my Peace Corps service. See, I was a fish out of water from Ohio, but, bringing my je ne sais quoi. And he's this man that knew everyone in the village. He was about 50 years old, beautiful black skin, about 5 working teeth that you could, when he smiled, you could feel it for miles. And he was in a wheelchair. He could not walk for as long as he could remember. And he was teaching me the local languages. And as I'm walking through in Mali, you know that a 30-minute walk is going to probably take you 2 hours because you must greet every single person you meet. So, Aniche, Ikakane, Somo Bobedi, hi, how are you? How's your family? And I walk that day through the red, dusty, red, dusty road to get to Abdullah. And I greet his family. Aniche, Ikakane, Somo Bobedi. He has 9 kids, 3 wives. And they're all greeting me back. I arrive at that roadside stand, and it's a little tattered, very modest, humble, planked with a very worn bench there. And I sit there and we do our daily language learning, because in Peace Corps you learn sometimes more languages than one. Pujoni, Kujoni, Wunawani. I also learned Seneca. And while we were there, Abdullah sells on the roadside stand. Unlike many of the men in the village who are farmers, Abdullah does this to earn his living for his family. He gets about 5 on average a day, and he is, we're sitting there learning our lesson for the day, and he is making tow, which is a typical Malian meal. No, it's not your fingers or toes, but it is a corn-like polenta that is a very typical dish. He's making it over a wood fire with some red sauce, and comes this motorcycle that has about 5 people too many on it. One gets off, lightening the load ever so slightly for them to keep going. And this man that gets off, he sits down at the roadside stand, and he's not from this place. The area, at least. He's got a turban, maybe from the north, who knows. Both Abdullah and I try our hand at greeting him. Between the 2 of us, we have 7 languages, and Not one of them land. Finally, the one person we meet in Mali that we cannot greet. So he sits down and starts eating with Abdullah. I give up with my charades games and I go home. The next day I come back and I'm sitting there with Abdullah, same roadside stand as before, and I ask, Abdullah, what happened to that guy yesterday? Did he pay? What happened? He says, no, he did not. He left this morning. Okay, Abdullah, where did he stay? Oh, he stayed at my home. Okay, Abdullah, I know your home is a 10 by 10 mud brick. You have one bed for your 12 inhabitants. Where did he stay? He stayed in my bed. Okay, so where did you and your entire family stay? Well, we slept outside. And in that moment, my Midwest hospitality idea of what it was crashed. You see, in Mali, if you ask for someone, you like someone's shirt, they're already taking it off to give it to you before you finish the sentence. There is actually no word for homelessness in Mali. And that is the day that I learned I didn't know what hospitality, I thought I knew what hospitality was, and Mali taught me I had much to learn.
Seven languages between them, and not one landed. Of course, those were her kids that had to be taken out during her story. So amazing. We got the youngest future Peace Corps volunteer in the house with her son Mo. It's very exciting. Next up, we're going to travel to the country of Tunisia with Jody Olson, who has had every job you can have in Peace Corps, but perhaps her most amazing one was a volunteer there. And she's going to be sharing her story, An Unusual Tunisian Meal.
I was in Tunisia. I'm doing a Marlena deep treat tonight. I was a volunteer in Tunisia. I was walking down the Medina path. I lived in the middle of the Medina. Every day I walked this path, about 15 minutes, to my Arabic teacher and his family. I passed the coriander, I passed the cumin, all in their gunny sacks, with the dry red peppers overhead. And the tea shop, this big, next door, the pots and pans being sold as I walked. And of course, there was the donkey. And the baying of the donkey, all of the time. As I walked down, I saw the wall of the Medina, 500 years old, rising high, and turned to the left, and that was the Zine Labadine home. 2-story brick home. I had been eating there every day for 4 months. He was my Arabic teacher, with his wife, his 2 children, and the grandparents. And they had taken me in. They were being very pleasant. My Arabic was horrible, my French was pretty bad, but I was working on it. I never got very good. And I would go each time and talk to the grandparents, because the grandpa had gone and done the Hajj, and just the importance of what the Hajj meant, and what their own religious background was to them. So this Monday, 5 days before I was taking this walk, they said, we're going to do a very special meal for you, really special. This is the best of a Tunisian meal. It will be on Friday, so get ready. So each day as I went, they said, remember, Friday's our special meal. And I was getting excited because they're wonderful people and they always serve me perfect food. Friday came, and of course I dressed up a bit, my teaching best, new sandals. As I walked down, I came to the door of this house. The hand of Fatima on the door, knocking away, and as you know, it echoed all 2 stories through the house, and I had gotten so attached to the echo of that knocker. I could hear Mahmoud's steps coming down, and he opened the door with the tafaddal. That word that was my favorite word because it says, welcome, you're home. The second tafaddal in his deep voice. We went up the stairs. His wife Suad was at the top, and even a better dress than she usually wears. I knew this was really special. And Grandma and Grandpa, Jabba, beautiful white Jabba. Grandma with some of the henna of her hair beneath the scarf. They had really prepared for this wonderful meal. The 2 kids were sitting there. I was at the head of the table. They put me at the head of the table. They always put me at the head of the table. And I said, no, I'm just a Peace Corps volunteer. No, you belong at the head of the table. So we sat down and did our usual beginning. And they served the brikalof, which is, it's like it's a triangle that you fry, and in the middle of it is a semi-rye and a couple of other things. And you try to eat it, and the goal is to get it in your mouth before the yolk breaks. Well, of course, I did my usual, which is watch the yolk run all the way down my elbow. And they're all smiling and really good. Then Suad says, okay, now for the special meal. We are so excited. Grandpa was out early, getting ready. The special meal came in. There, on this tray, was a half of a cow's head. The little ear was right up there. The little eye was right there. There it was, staring at me. That's one eye. I was trying to stay calm. My stomach was telling me this was not going to be a good moment. I looked down, I looked up, and it was, what do I do? Do I try to eat this thing? My stomach was saying, please don't. And I made at that second, that moment, I have to tell them somehow that I can't eat this half a cow's head. So I was finding these few words of Arabic. How do I do it? We'll talk about, I'm sure it's delicious, but in my head, in my psychology, from my culture, I can't eat it. Well, there aren't really good Arabic words for that, but I was struggling along, apologizing, feeling stupider by the moment. All of a sudden, Suad started smiling. Mahmoud smiled. Even Grandpa smiled. And then Mahmoud started this glorious laugh that just echoed through the whole dining room. And then Suad, then Grandma, then Grandpa, then the 2 kids. And they were just laughing at me. So I laughed, ha ha ha. Then Suad stood up and she says, okay, in Arabic, we'll go into the kitchen and you can make your own lunch. Of green leaves, a little bit of olive oil and some chickpeas. And I came back and we laughed and laughed as they ate part of the cow's head. And we ate my green leaves. What that moment was that I loved this family. They had become who I was. I was so fearful at that moment it would be over because I couldn't accept this tremendous gift that they had given me. And I risked, I will be honest, I'll be vulnerable, I'll do what I have to do because I have to be honest, but maybe I'm gonna lose this family. It was that moment that for the next 18 months, we were literally one family because I trusted that they could hear me and they trusted that I would accept whatever this was about. I'm still not sure whether it was supposed to be a joke. I learned honesty, vulnerability with people that you love and want us to be friends with makes you friends for life.
So many of us have experienced our food looking back at us in the Peace Corps. We can all relate to the fear of that, and just amazing. And the vulnerability and the ear, fingers, really my favorite part of that story, I think. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to travel to Latin America. Latin American RPCB in the house. Okay. We're headed to Costa Rica with Ursula Wright and her story, The Season of Giving, Except for the Lysol.
So, rainy season always brought an abundance of gifts. It had a bunch of rain that brought out the colors in the trees, so you saw yellow, brown, all the beautiful colors. There were mangoes, there were avocados, everything in between. The best thing, and if you're arachnophobe, you might want to cover your ears, it brought a bunch of insects and spiders. Spiders that were big, small, some were shiny, some had hair, some were poisonous, but there was just a lot of spiders in Costa Rica. For some reason, especially where I was, just had a bunch of spiders. So my host sister told me a little secret. Now, I don't know if this is folklore or if it's accurate or whatever, but I believed her because she said it with such conviction. She said if you take aerosol spray and spray around the doors and the window seals, that spiders won't be going into your room or scorpions or anything like that. So I believed it. So every single night, her son, Jose Mario, who's 8, that was my little host brother, and Oscar Andres, 10, they would help me each night of rainy season to spray concrete floors. The windows were wood, so, you know, it didn't really do anything, but it made me feel good. So Lysol was my choice because it smelled good, and it just reminded me of disinfecting everything, and also reminded me of America. For some reason, every single care package I got never made it. So I always wanted Lysol. I have one bottle that I got from the American store. So that was my prized possession. For Thanksgiving, my brother and sister from the States wanted to come visit me. And I said, great, let's do it. Let's have fun. And they were like, well, what do you want? I said, I want a bottle of Lysol. I didn't explain anything, I didn't give them any hints as to why Lysol, but I said Lysol. So both of them jump on the plane from New York, and they're bringing this precious bottle of Lysol, and I finally meet up with them in San Jose. And I don't really tell them much about the itinerary because I figure let's keep it a surprise. So we jump on a bus immediately, and we're going for 4 hours all the way to Guanacaste. So we're going down windy streets, we're going through mountains, we're passing beaches, everything in between. Finally, we stop. And the thing about my site is, if you blink, you might miss it because there's no signs really. The only reason why I knew it was my site was because my counterpart's house is on the side of the road, and I just knew we're getting off. This is La Villa de Mansión, and here we are. So my brother and sister, they get off the bus with me, and we're standing on the side of the road. And I say, guess what? We got 20 more minutes of walking. Okay, let's do this. So as we're walking, everything's beautiful. Like I said, green trees, there's cows, but the road is a little bit dusty because it hasn't rained in a bit. And as we're walking, my brother looks at me and says, gosh, I didn't realize there were dusty roads at Posh Corps. I'm like, okay. Okay. So my brother had just left Morocco from his service as a youth development volunteer about 3 weeks prior. So I think he was a little bit, like, wow, this is Costa Rica compared to Morocco. So, we have that to talk about a lot. What felt like forever, we finally landed at my host family's compound. 2 houses, a bunch of dogs, chickens, and my host family run out to greet us. Jose Mario and Oscar Andres immediately jump on my brother. I think they're just excited to have a boy around. My host grandma, Doña Fabita, immediately adopts my sister, and they're best friends. So for the next few days, it's not raining, so rain means no spiders. And we're getting along great, everything's going well. Families are meshing together, exchanging stories, trying to speak Spanish, some Arabic here and there. We're just having a good time. All of a sudden, the night before we're getting ready to go back to the capital city, it starts raining. And Jose Mario was super excited because he was like, okay, this is where we finally get to use this aerosol spray and seal our doors. And of course, my brother and sister don't really know what's going on because again, they don't know that this is our nightly ritual where we use Lysol or whatever aerosol spray to line the doors and windows. So we're all getting ready to do this together. And I go and I do my doors. And I put the Lysol up. So my brother and sister look at me, they're like, okay, well, can we use it? And as volunteers, we're irrational. So I say no. Yeah, that did not end well. We ended up getting in this huge fight. My brother, my sister, me, we're yelling at each other. All of a sudden, my host family, they have to come in and try to stop this fight. We call my mom, the States, finally we settled it. All is good. So we end up going to an embassy family's home for Thanksgiving, and it's good, we're having fun. I thought my brother and sister forgot about the little argument, so I didn't mention it, but we were all sitting around this beautiful dinner of turkey, stuffing, there's sweet potatoes, a bunch of stuff, and we're all kind of telling stories. And they asked my sister, because she's the only non-volunteer, and they're like, how are you liking Costa Rica? And she says, I love Costa Rica, it's great. The only thing I don't like is my sister hoarding Lysol. And I'm just like, oh man, this is gonna follow me forever. In that moment, I knew that story and their memories of Costa Rica were gonna be cemented. So every single year after that, 15 years plus, we always talk about Lysol, me being stingy, but also my family and my host family forming a bond and having such a great time together. Thank you.
That story reminds me of when my parents came to visit me in Malawi. They used 3 months worth of toilet paper when they were at my site. I was very unhappy about that. Didn't have any Lysol to hoard, but I was eager to hoard that. So we're heading back to Africa. We're going to North Africa, to Morocco with Jim Rupert and his story, The Gifts of Service.
Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. O volunteers, may the peace and the compassion and the blessings of God be with you. For decades, fellow Peace Corps volunteers have shared with me the feeling that those gifts of service, those gifts that we receive from our service, feel so much greater than those we gave. And that was already how it felt to us in 1982 in Morocco, to Bill and Ron and to me as we were finishing our 2 years building a vocational school in an abandoned warehouse on the dry plains outside our dusty town of Khalat Sarahna. We took gifts of laughter, hugs, and love from the dozens of boys to whom we had taught welding and mechanics and woodworking. But the future looked agonizing because we learned that the Social Affairs Ministry had not managed to have the budget to train and prepare Moroccan teachers to follow us in our classrooms. And Peace Corps Morocco grimly informed us that many of the schools that our cohort of 24 volunteers had built across the country would be closed, at least for a time. With our group, I wrote a letter of pained protest to our Peace Corps North Africa director, named Jody Olson. And back in Kala, Ron and Bill and I schemed to try to keep our school open by organizing a festive graduation ceremony for our boys and inviting every government official we could get to come and tour the school and sit on the stage and bask in the crowd's applause over the school's establishment. And then I went off to what would become 35 years as a foreign correspondent. And my wife Karen and I, we raised our kids in West Africa and India and Pakistan and eventually back in the States for college. When my daughter Sarah chose study abroad in Morocco, I flew to Rabat and visited and then asked, once classes had ended, whether we might go down to Khalat Sarahna to see if the school had survived. But holy cow, Kala had tripled in size, and the only way, I told Sarah, I said, the only way I could think to find the school is we're gonna have to start at my apartment and walk out the road to Fez until the microwave tower up on the hill is right there off of our shoulders, our right shoulders. But when we got there, we were facing not a school in a dusty lot, but the high metal fence of a sprawling construction materials depot piled with bricks and concrete and rebar. At the gate, a security guard scurried up, Omar, thin guy, mustache, and I said, Omar, is there anyone? I explained, I was here decades ago as a teacher in a vocational school, and I said, is there anyone inside who knows when they built this place, did they tear down any pre-existing building? And he says, oh, Teacher Jim, this is Morocco. If you're a teacher, it's your title, like doctor or governor. Oh, Teacher Jim, I was here when we built this place, and I can tell you that we didn't tear down any previous building. I can also tell you that your vocational school is one block up and on the right. And Sarah and I walked around the corner, and my brain exploded. Half of my brain said, it's the school, it's the shape of the building, the wall, the gate, everything, it's exactly right. And the other half said, no, this is wrong. Our school had a barren dirt courtyard, and there are these 30-foot trees rising out from behind that wall, and this is crazy. Ding, ding. Suddenly, I remembered a tiny last victory as we were leaving Kala. Our school director at the time, Hassan, had scored some eucalyptus saplings. They were as thin as your finger. You could bend them like this. And the boys had planted them. And now these are trees with trunks that you can put your arm around. And we found the current school director's home, and I knocked at the gate, a young man comes, and I said, probably no one remembers anymore, but the vocational school, actually, it was initially built by American volunteers. And the young man, he nods, puts up his hand, pulls out his cell phone, and he says, Dad, one of the American teachers came. And Bashir Ghazi, school director, rushed home to greet us and to say, we knew the school was built by Peace Corps volunteers, but we never had any way to contact you. And he gives us a tour, and look, Morocco is as corrupt a country as any, but the welding hoods and the cutting benches and the engine stands and the work tables that we built with our boys are still here. The tools that we bought with USAID money in 1980 is still here at work. And Bashir has added an IT classroom, and now they can teach girls too. And Bashir opens his computer to look for a number. 2,225. That's how many students have studied here in my 19 years as director. And he said, you know, the budgets have always been like this. They've tried to close the school at least 3 times. But it was clear that through it all, this brother of mine had saved what we had built. And we couldn't stay long, so Bashir drove us to the taxi station. And as we get into the back of a car, I'm like this, you know, with tears of pride and gratitude, because those gifts that we receive from our service, mine had just multiplied 100-fold. And Sarah put her arm around me and she gives my shoulder a squeeze and she says, "You done good, Dad." And I wept those same tears of pride and gratitude 18 months later, because my gifts from service had multiplied again. Because I was watching my girl back in Morocco as she raised her right hand and swore in as a Peace Corps volunteer.
Heard that story 10 times. I've gotten weepy every single time. Thank you, Jim. Next up, bringing us home and to the Far East, we have BJ Wetstein, who served in Peace Corps China, with his story, The Chinese Students Who Saved Christmas.
As a Peace Corps volunteer in China, all I wanted for Christmas was to 回家过节, to be home for the holidays. Now don't get me wrong, China was amazing. And my wife Chandra and I had spent our first few months as English teachers in a university in BJ Guizhou, diving into our work, learning Chinese, and building amazing relationships with our students. Students like Li Minyong, who invited us over for lunch in his Against the Rules off-campus apartment. Or Ma Huiling, who volunteered to be our Chinese teacher after our first few Chinese teachers didn't work out. Or Li Xia, who took us back to her hometown and showed us the mud floor houses where her parents had grown up. So we could go to Li Xia's home for the holidays, but we could not go to our own home. Because we couldn't get home, my wife Chandra and I decided that we wanted to spend a quiet, peaceful Christmas together, just the two of us. However, 3 things conspired to prevent our peaceful Christmas. Number 1, the wonderful care package that our family had packed with care and sent us from Indiana, full of all the holiday meal fixins had been infested with pantry moths. And a pantry moth larva does add a certain something to pecan pie, a little extra protein. Number 2, the weather in Guizhou is not great. From October to March, the sun never comes out. This is such a salient part of life in Guizhou that the capital city of Guizhou is called Guiyang, which means precious sun. Never comes out. And the third thing, like many Peace Corps volunteers, we had definitely overcommitted ourselves in the run-up to Christmas. We had written and directed an adaptation of A Christmas Carol for our students to perform in front of the entire university. We were showing American holiday films in our classes and in the evening for our students to watch. We were hosting Christmas parties for our students. You know, second goaling. Some of Chandra's students also invited her to join a dance group and perform a traditional Guizhou dance at a local Christian church on Christmas Eve. So the girls had designed dresses, these beautiful long white dresses with flower patterns around the hem and the belt and a headdress. And so Christmas Eve arrives, Chandra puts on her dress, we bundle up in our coats, and we go pile into this tiny city bus to make it down to the church. As we pull up to the church, it's a very interesting scene. There are groups of kids beating each other with large inflatable hammers, spraying each other with silly string, and wearing really creepy Santa masks with light-up devil horns. Christmas Eve in Western China is somewhat a cross between Halloween and New Year's Eve. It's a big deal. So we go into the church. This place is absolutely packed. There are over 1 billion people in China, and I think every single one of them was in that church that night. So I find my way to my seat in the audience. Chandra and her students go backstage, and I wait for the performance. There are a few other acts that go, and then the students come out. Now, Chandra and I were the only Americans in BGA. So Chandra made quite a sensation because she is 5'9", blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and she's doing this traditional Guizhou dance. The people cannot believe it. Standing ovation, wild applause. But there are so many people in this church, we're like, we gotta get out of here. So our students form a wedge, and we fall in behind them, and the students are pushing through the crowd. As we get about halfway out of the church, I hear Chandra gasp behind me. I turn around and I say, Chandra, what's wrong? She looks at me and says, BJ, someone just grabbed my butt. My protective instincts take over, and I said, who did this to you? And she points at a bewildered middle-aged man in a tweed jacket. So I grab him by the lapels, and I shout in his face, Meleia, that's me, ma! You want me to beat you to death? His bewilderment turns to terror. But before I can make good on my threat, Chandra taps me on the shoulder, and she says, not that guy, that guy! I turn around, and it is a teenager with spiky hair, a black leather jacket, and a ridiculous smirk on his face. Now, I had already lost enough face threatening the wrong man with death. I did not want to lose any more face by threatening to kill a child. So I slunk out of the church. Our students consoled Chandra. They got me to calm down. They got us in taxis and they sent us home safely. And at that point, we pretty much thought Christmas was ruined. We woke up the next day with not a lot of Christmas spirit, and we were kind of moping around. A few hours into the day, however, we hear a shout from outside of our apartment. BJ! I look outside, and who is it? But Li Minyong, Ma Huiling, Li Xia, and about 20 of our other students. And they are loaded down with bags of meat and vegetables and spices. So I go and let them in, and immediately they go to work. Li Xia is chopping the vegetables and prepping the ingredients. Ma Huiling is working the wok and making magic food come out of that thing. And Li Minyong is bringing out the dishes as they're ready. The Yushang Qiezi, mapo tofu, and the BGS specialty, suan cai, which is fermented greens with red beans and ground pork. So good. So we take the food and I sit down with my students and we're eating and we're laughing. And I realize that I am surrounded by people who respect me, who protect me, who teach me, who love me. And I realized that I had Huojia Guojie. I was home for the holidays.
Thank you all so much for spending some time with us this evening. Thank you, storytellers, for your polished approach to sharing the Peace Corps experience. Just a reminder, this is event number 4 in our programming associated with the exhibit that's on display, Peace by Design, Peace Corps posters, poetry, and the spirit of Peace Corps. The exhibit is up through February 13th of this year, and this is one of 2 exhibits that we'll have here at the library. So they've invited us back for a second exhibit in 2026, which we're very excited about, and that will commemorate 2 things. 1, America's 250th anniversary, and also the 65th anniversary of Peace Corps. So we hope that you'll help us to continue to build the museum and build materials, share stories that convey the incredible experiences we have as volunteers, but also those of the people that we worked with. So one of the many initiatives at the museum is our Many Faces of Peace Corps. It's our diversity, equity, and inclusion team. And their main focus now is to increase the content from host country nationals. So we're rolling out a pilot of that experience. We want to expand the content of the museum, not just to be the stories of volunteers, but the objects and stories of the host families that held us, the counterparts that we worked with, the students in our schools, and the many people that helped us along these journeys. So I invite you all to spend some time in community together, view the exhibit, introduce yourself to somebody new, and please think about contributing to the Museum of the Peace Corps experience to help us build more exhibits and programming like this. Thanks so much for joining us.